Welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast, where today's brightest minds in the medical device industry go to get their most useful and actionable insider knowledge direct from some of the world's leading medical device experts and companies.
You know, one of the things that makes Greenlight Guru unique is what we call our Guru Edge. And more specifically, we have a whole team of people, medical device gurus, who have a ton of industry experience prior to joining Greenlight Guru. And I thought we would try something a little bit different on the Global Medical Device Podcast. I thought we would feature some of our gurus and let you know a little bit about who they are and their background and how they work with customers and medical device companies all over the globe. So enjoy this episode of the Global Medical Device Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast. This is your host, the founder and VP of Quality and Regulatory at Greenlight Guru, Jon Speer. And I thought we would do something a little bit different on this episode of the Global Medical Device Podcast. And that something different is I want to introduce you all to some of our gurus who work at Greenlight Guru and let them share some of their experiences and insights. So joining me today, thrilled about this, is Taylor Brown. Taylor Brown is a medical device guru at Greenlight Guru. It's a mouthful. Taylor, welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast.
Thanks, John. Yeah, excited to do this today.
Well, let's give everybody, I guess a good place to start, give everybody a little bit about a background about who you are and what makes you tick and what you enjoy about med device. So go ahead and dive in.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. So my background is actually in pharmaceuticals, was my internship in college, and I was a document control specialist there. So I know we're in EQMS, but I was the girl who walked around paper documents to people's desks and got them to sign off. So it hits home for a lot of people, I'm sure. I love the document control because you got to go out and talk to people and learn how processes were done and make changes to make things run more efficiently. And then after I graduated, I worked in medical device distribution for a couple of years. And there I was the quality specialist, and then I became lead auditor for the team. So I would go around to I think it was 46 different locations across the country and audit them. And if we had new locations crop up, I would help set up their quality management system. So I definitely used to working from scratch at that team. And then I got transferred up to Indianapolis and started to look for new opportunities. And it turns out Greenlight was about 2 miles from my apartment. So that's how I ended up here. Yeah, short commute.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I've picked up, knowing you now for a couple of years, you actually love auditing, right?
I love auditing. It's the greatest. And I'm not even being sarcastic when I say that. I think it equates to like the first day of college and you get the syllabus and you're like, okay, this is everything I have to do. Okay, great. That's what ISO 13485 is to me. Like, just follow the rules, perform everything correctly, and you'll get an A. So yes, I do love auditing. I like finding out more about different processes and different people and how different organizations meet the regulations.
Yeah, I mean, it takes. I mean, it's somebody has to like it, right? Somebody has to love it.
Someone has to love it, yeah.
I'm curious. You talked about in the time that I've known you that you had responsibility for auditing, like, would you say 46 sites for the medical device distributor?
Yeah.
And I'm curious. I know how I often felt when the auditor, whether internal or external, came to visit me. Do you think that people were excited when you were coming to audit them?
I would hope so, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty fun, but no, in all seriousness, I really enjoyed auditing the sites who especially didn't have a lot of familiarity with ISO 13485. So we were distributors, so we would have new, bigger manufacturers, want to work with us, and we would go to that location they wanted to work with and do just a preliminary audit to see what we were working with. And I always enjoyed talking to the people who didn't know about the ins and outs of 1345. They knew there were rules. They knew there were guidelines they had to follow. But I really enjoyed putting like the why behind it and putting meaning into, why they have to perform training activities in order to do their job, or why CAPAs are so important, and really give us better insight into how we can make improvements as a team.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, that why is really key, and I think that's maybe why a lot of folks who dread audit situations might be dreading them, because they haven't connected the dots to understand why this is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I never wanted to be the person who came in and told them everything that was wrong and then walked out. So
Yeah.
I would always try to, not take action for them, but help them get to the root cause and help them determine a solution that made sense for what they were doing, but also was compliant. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's hard to believe that I've known you now and been working with you now for about 2 years. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. Time flies, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So, in your role at Greenlight, you're a medical device guru. You work with our customer success team, and that means you get to interact with a lot of customers. So I guess, as well as internal and external, I guess I should preface that because you do a lot of work inside, working with dev and product and other areas of the business too. But what do you enjoy most about being a medical device guru at Greenlight?
And that's a title that only works for Greenlight, right? Like I can't be a med device guru anywhere else.
Well, I mean, we're setting a precedent. So maybe.
Right. It's always, like you said, it's a mouthful when you say it on webinars and everything. But I really live for the light bulb moments. And so whether it's talking about audits, getting through the first notified body audit and realizing all the preparation, all the work on our procedures and training and implementation really paid off. Or even something as simple as when someone who is new to 1345 or the CFR it finally clicks like, okay, verifications, validations, like I understand the difference. Even small things like that are really just meaningful for me, because then I can tell that not only are we learning about how to bring their devices to market, but it's correct. And I think at Greenlight we talk about putting the guardrails in place, but understanding where those guardrails came from is really important to me. And then it just goes to show that through our training and relationship with the customers and clients that we support, it is making sense, and the regulations aren't this big, scary, PDF that you have to look at and go through and follow. It really is the guidelines for how you're going to perform your work.
Now, you talked about early in your career loving the document management experience and loving walking documents around from one person to the next. I mean, obviously, you still get involved with document management from a Greenlight perspective, but our customers are all over the world. So, how is that working out when you're working with a company in Denmark or a company in New Zealand? How does that all work? Because I mean, I know you would be happy to get on a plane and go there, but obviously
100%.
This platform. How do you find that experience? I guess compare and contrast to walking a document around versus the Greenlight experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely got a lot of steps in on my Fitbit when I was walking the documents around, but not necessarily one of my favorite experiences, because you do, see the classic tropes, I guess, of people who, lose the document on their desk or don't want to sign off. They don't have time right now. So a lot of times I just kind of hung out in that person's hallway until they could sign off. So probably not a great use of time. I think with Greenlight, it's a great equalizer to know that if you're in Denmark, working with someone in New Zealand, working with someone in Indianapolis, there's no delay in getting what you need completed. And we always joke that it doesn't matter where you are, in the office or on the beach, you can sign off on a document. It's important to know, especially with all these stay-at-home orders and people's daily lives have been a bit shaken up with just new environments that, work can still be done and you're not relying on the intern to walk around and bring you the documents that you need to review.
Well, I can relate to that walking things around in my career. And I wasn't an intern either, but, people got, we had one of the companies I used to work for, we had a red folder process.
Mm-hmm.
And the red folder was for all these critical changes that were really urgent and important. And, our approach was, we needed to get something done. So the company I worked for it was spread across about 6 buildings in 2 towns that were probably about 10 miles apart or so.
Mm-hmm.
And there were plenty of times that I would get in my car with my red folder and go from building to building to find all the people to sign off on it. And sometimes, I sat outside their office waiting on them. And it's kind of a weird stalker type thing, It shouldn't be that way, but it still is in a lot of cases. I mean,
yeah.
I got to imagine some of the customers, when you start working with them, that they're probably migrating from that practice to a more efficient way. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Your red folder was my blue paper. So when I was based in Kentucky. So when I would go to support audits, me being the type A person that I am, I would prep everything and print all my files ahead of time on blue paper, which was my way of saying, this is an official document. I know there's different ways, stamps and initials that people make a document official. And so I would print everything off on blue paper. And then I would ship it to the location I was going to. So I'd ship it to LA, or I'd ship it to Baltimore, I'd ship it to Dallas. And so I think that box of blue paper got more miles on it than most people in a given year. So when you talk to organizations who are used to having the blue paper, used to having the red folders, there's always a bit of hesitation. Like, wait, it's that easy? Like, if I want to check out a document, granted I have the right roles and permissions, like I can just do it, and then it gets approved, and then people can reject it with their comments, and these documents never see a paper copy oftentimes. So there's always a little bit of buy-in, like, wait, I don't have to recreate the wheel. Awesome.
Right. Well, and you mentioned when you were walking things around that sometimes things were getting lost on people's desks, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about the Greenlight system is it's pretty impossible for it to get lost because it's always there,
Mm-hmm.
And I got to imagine from an auditor perspective that you might have a love-hate relationship with Greenlight, right?
Yeah, because nothing ever goes away. It's all there all the time.
It makes the audit smoother.
I was helping one of our customers up in, they were kind of all over the Midwest, but up in New Hampshire, they were having an audit. And she's like, I was getting done so much quicker than I thought I would. Like, usually I would get to take a break and go look for a document and give time to myself to calm down. But it was just like, boom, 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 one document after the other. They got done faster, but it was a quicker process for sure.
Yeah. I know we've heard quite a few stories about the audit experience with customers that have implemented Greenlight. I recall one, I don't remember if you were working with this customer or not, but I recall a specific customer that it was like a 2.5 day audit or something like that, or maybe it was 3 days, but regardless, they were done in like half the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for me, that's awesome, right? Because I've been on both sides of the audit table, and it's never fun for anybody, and even the auditor. I mean, even though you enjoyed it, it's still kind of this grinding process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with, again, going back to stay-at-home orders and people working in different environments, we have a couple customers who had audits scheduled before all of this started occurring, and were able to keep their audit dates because they're using Greenlight, and because they can invite their auditor in with a very limited viewing of documents and share those files with them as they ask for. So instead of having to ship a box of blue paper to the auditor or come up with some complicated way of sharing and emailing files back and forth, they were able to keep those audit dates.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So I'm curious. You've been at Greenlight now for a couple of years as a medical device guru. What do you enjoy most about that?
I really enjoy, well, selfishly, it's nice to go through audits and not have to actually be there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as you mentioned, I would love to go support our customer in New Zealand who's going through a notified body audit next week. But it's more of I get to sit back, wish them luck, and then help them go through the findings on the other side. So, as much as I love the hot seat, it's nice to be over here, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, going with that, I also really enjoy being an extension of our customers' teams. So, getting to celebrate with them. I know here at Greenlight, we're really big on celebrating when you get, your 510K, get your ISO cert, manufacture your first product. So, being a part of those celebrations and working with customers sometimes every week and having updates on how they're progressing through their med device journey.
Yeah. So that New Zealand customer that's going through the notified body audit, I mean, next week, I got to believe that they're ready.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're ready. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, they were a good team, but they remind me a lot of myself where they're like, all right, help us practice. Like, what are we doing if the auditor says, they want to see supplier? What should go through our brain? What documents to pull? So they're going to do awesome. And I'm excited to talk to them after the fact.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I know you have a lot of them, but maybe pick a couple of your favorite customer stories.
One of the first customers I started working with up in Canada, it's the CTO who was in charge of pulling together the quality management system. It's a team of 3 people, and Dylan was the CTO. And they purchased Greenlight. They purchased our smaller template package that we offer just to kind of get them started. We started going through those documents together, and everything started falling into place. And then all of a sudden, we get to the point where he has to start writing the quality manual. And he's asking me about how I wrote my quality manual previously. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was these 70-page document with all these diagrams and references and bookmarks within the Word file. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm going to get the larger template package from Greenlight. So he implemented our templates and we went through everything together. And at the end, after he uploaded all the files into Greenlight, he goes, okay, what do I do now? And I'm like, you did it. Like, you just live with it now. Like, he thought there was going to be some, like fireworks show or like the FDA was going to like walk in immediately. And I'm like, no, that's the beauty of a quality management system. You do your first iteration and then you learn more about it. You make changes and you get feedback and then you make your next iteration. So I think with Greenlight, having the templates as a starting point and then, really encouraging continuous growth, continuous improvement is part of what makes my relationship with our customers so special.
All right. So whenever you start working with a customer, talk a little bit about what kind of advice or tips or point, or maybe even there might be some folks listening today who are considering Greenlight Guru and what the experience is like, and what. I guess let's start with that person who maybe hasn't quite made that decision to move to Greenlight yet. What are some things that they should be thinking about from the health of their company or their quality system or what have you? Regardless if they choose Greenlight Guru or not.
Yeah, I think for anyone, it's important to know that you don't have to do everything on day one. So with Dylan up in Canada, he wanted to review all QMS documents over the matter of a couple of days. And I said, that's not feasible. You'll go crazy. I love QMS documents and I can't read that many over the span of a couple of days. So we really just sat down and we said, what do you want it to do your first 30 days? And he says, I want to write my project plan. I want to start design control and get into risk management. And so we said, okay, then those are the first 3 SOPs that you need to look at. And I know here at Greenlight, we call that bootstrapping. your QMS. So not signing yourself up for the things you don't need right now. You don't really need a CAPA process on day one. You don't need an internal audit process on day one because you have nothing to audit. So really taking that phased approach, and even customers who have an existing QMS and are looking to bring that information into Greenlight, it's not a matter of uploading 5 years of historical documents the first 2 weeks. You can really take a phased approach and upload what is most meaningful and most utilized by the team.
So would it be fair to say that that kind of approach would be captured in some sort of quality plan? Is that a fair way to describe that?
That's definitely a fair. Every good idea starts with a plan. So, the FGA always says, if you didn't document it, you didn't do it. Well, same goes for making plans for quality implementation, just so everyone's working off the same plan and you have a clear expectation of what you need to do next.
Well, I know that in my career, I get a lot of questions from people like, "What is a quality plan?" and where do you have templates for this and that sort of thing? And I'm going to borrow a phrase from you. Sometimes it's just not that deep.
Yeah, it is not that deep. I don't know how to say that back to you, but yeah, I think due to the nature of the industry that we're in and the pressure, I think is a good word for it, to comply quickly with the regulations, we tend to, myself included, overcomplicate things. And so at the end of the day, if you're looking at the standard and using supplier management as a good example, there's no requirement that you need to audit your suppliers twice a year. So if that's not feasible for your team, probably don't put that in your supplier management SOP.
Yeah.
So taking a step back and thinking almost minimally viable product, like what do we need to do to meet the regulations, to do a good job, and to not drive ourselves crazy by the end of this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people do get kind of wound up on this whole topic, and they're seeking perfection too, and do you have thoughts about, if you're trying to make the perfect quality system, some pros and cons to that approach?
I think the perfect quality system is one, clearly meets the regulations, but that's it. When you go to audit people, you're auditing to the regulation, to the standard. If someone has going back to my example, if someone has a requirement to audit all of their suppliers twice a year, cool, that's great. You better be doing that because you wrote that into your procedure. So the more complicated you make things, it's actually the harder to meet those requirements, and you end up, putting yourselves in a hole. Imagine, in 2020, if I said I had to go do an on-site audit of all my suppliers twice a year, that's not going to happen in 2020 with everyone at home and everyone's schedule shaken up. So be flexible. And if you do have to deviate from a process, it's not the end of the world. But again, you do need to document what you're doing. When I talk to my customers on audit prep calls or some of the biweekly meetings that we have, for example, I'm always a big fan of memos, because if you're documenting a decision that you're making ahead of you making the decision, then that's proof that you've thought about it, you've done a risk analysis, and you're documenting what you're doing, even if you are deviating from a process. If you continue to deviate from a process, you may want to change that, but as long as you have a rationale for what you're doing.
Yeah, and it in my career, it took me a long time to figure this out. I didn't appreciate in those early years that a quality system should be a living entity, so to speak, something that evolves, that I'm continually evaluating and updating. And I think this is where a lot of companies get into like sort of a trap where they almost look at their quality system as something that's etched in stone that it cannot be updated. But then when what's defined doesn't align with the actual practice, then they get themselves into some trouble,
Yeah. This is kind of cheesy, but that's why I loved being audited. To have someone who doesn't live in the day-to-day, the grind of the process, to come in with fresh eyes and say, you really don't have to do that, or this requirement that you've had in your procedure since 2012 hasn't been completed in the past 3 years or something crazy like that. Just examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, having someone come in with fresh eyes to point out ways you can improve. I mean, that's what an audit is. It doesn't feel like that sometimes, but it really is meant to improve and make sure that everyone's relying on the standard to guide their work.
For sure. I mean, you said something a moment ago that reminded me of back in the day when I was doing some consulting. It was this small med device company, and they had an FDA inspection that didn't go so well, and they had, I don't know, quite a few 483 observations, and they brought me in to try to help remediate those things. And this is like October-ish timeframe in the calendar year, and I'm going through all the findings and then dive into their procedure. And it was a company of like 20 people, and the amount of rigor that they had defined within their quality system, it was not something that they could sustain. And one of the things that was kind of like I guess an aha moment, and maybe not in such a good way, but as I'm doing my gap analysis of all their other procedures, I came across their internal auditing procedure, and their internal auditing procedure said, "Thou shalt conduct internal audits on all processes annually, all the time," or something like that. And by the time I'm looking at this, we're into November-ish timeframe. Like, hey, you guys have this internal auditing procedure. You've already had all these observations. We're trying to clear those things up. What do you want to do about that? And they're like, oh, we should conduct internal audits. I mean, that's on all I said, on all your processes. Yeah. Like, that's a tall order for the next, 5 to 6 weeks of the year, especially considering you got Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays and all these sorts of things. We'll hire somebody that used to work here. She can do it, and they did. And this lady never came on site to do any of these internal audits, which it theoretically is possible.
Yeah.
But she never talked to anybody either. She just looked at their procedure, like she did. She checked the box and said, "Yep, did internal audits," and it was like 30 internal audits. And their procedures also said anytime there was an issue identified during any kind of audit, that it was automatically a CAPA, right? And so then of these 30 internal audits, I think there was probably a new 25 or 30 CAPAs that got generated too. And it was like they just couldn't get out of their own way. It was like they weren't, the quality system was dictating. It wasn't working for them. They were working for it, and that's a bad way to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to say I did something similar because it's kind of a scary story. But yeah, I mean, things fall off the schedule. And I remember one year, all of our internal audits for each of the sections of ISO is how we did it, came in Q3 and Q4. And so it was a hustle to get those items completed. And we had planned to do better. We had planned to have things earlier in the year, but they just got pushed. And I think our management review for the year was something like December 23rd or some really convenient date, which I'm sure no one was mad at me for planning it on that day. So just planning ahead and planning resources too, I think is really important. If it is going to be one person who is performing this audit in your example, let's make sure that that person has the tools that they need, as well as the timing that they need to perform their work.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about things that companies should be doing or people should be doing who may or may not be Greenlight customers. But let's change the context a little bit. So let's imagine a company signs with Greenlight and is getting the ball rolling, so to speak, and they start working with you. What are some things that are important to that customer's success in order to adopt Greenlight and start to realize the benefits that Greenlight Guru can provide?
That's such a good question. I think it's a really simple answer, is just being curious about the system, but also the regulations. Within Greenlight, we're really fortunate, and this sounds really kind of sales pitchy, so sorry, but we get each customer a test account, which when I used my first EQMS, I did not have a test account. So I had to learn everything the hard way, which would be creating bad records in our production environment and thinking, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that after the fact. So you can learn a lot by just trying things. And we do have training webinars and training touch points and articles and videos on how to get people acquainted with the system. But even when I joined Greenlight, I learned so much just by clicking around the system and saying, okay, if I were to go do a design review, what are some of the things I would have done in my previous life, and how would those look in Greenlight? So not necessarily trial and error, but just trying things out and seeing how they look. That being said, it's my team's responsibility to make sure that our customers are successful. It's a great pillar of customer success team. But you can learn a lot just by clicking around and exploring within the test environment, I think.
Yeah. One of the other things that I want to highlight for customers that I know you were very influential in driving and helping implement our what we call it Operation Train Better inside the Greenlight. But there is some awesome content that you've helped a spearhead, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended. But talk a little bit about from a customer perspective, some of the assets that are there in addition to the test environment that can help them adapt to some of the workflows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Operation Train Better. we kind of just took it on because something that's really important to our team is because we've worked in the industry as standard work. So I talked a while ago about recreating the wheel, not recreating the wheel every single time we have a new customer join the Greenlight Guru family. So we thought about how can we standardize these training calls and training walkthroughs so that not only when new customers join the family, but also when existing customers have new employees. And so, when I first started at Greenlight, you'd get a call from someone, I have 3 new hires starting next week and I don't have time to train them on the process. Can you set up a call as soon as possible? And we were happy to do that, but it just felt so reactive. And so with the training webinars that we have at various time zones and various times throughout the week, it really is creating a standard work and it's on a set schedule. So when a manager knows that they're getting new people, they can go ahead and make plans to put these new hires in these webinars and get them acquainted with the Greenlight system. We also have our help center. So sometimes it's easier to read about things rather than sit through a video. So we have articles as well as those videos I referred to, as well as a support ticket site. So if you do have quick questions, what am I missing here? Where am I in the process? I got myself lost. You can submit those as tickets as well.
The other thing that we've always done this, but I think we're making it a little bit easier for folks to submit their ideas too. That's awesome, and I really want our customers to understand we listen to your feedback, and Taylor is one of those gurus who's very involved in helping to assess and evaluate all the suggestions, the feedback that our customers provide, and that's got to feel awesome too. Whenever a customer suggests something, you're like, oh wow, that's a really good idea, and then actually see it be put into practice.
Yeah, 100%. We're med device focused, so a lot of our workflows, the process comes from the SIN and the CFR, but it's a lot of those, we call them internally customer happiness features, or even something as simple as can you add this new document category to the drop-down list? It's like, yes, absolutely. If that makes your day that much easier, then we'll do it. And it's really cool to see customer feedback come in that, I hadn't thought of that feature in that way. That'd be a really cool way to be more compliant or to make the workflows more streamlined.
Cool. Well, Taylor, I appreciate you taking some time. I know how busy you are working with a lot of our customers. The Tell us a little bit about Taylor Brown, the human. I mean, because I think it's really important that this is something that in my career, and yeah, maybe I have a bias as the founder of Greenlight, but we want to humanize all of this because we're all in this together, the world together, and Greenlight's mission is to improve the quality of life. And we make a very concerted effort to try to get to know our customers. But what are some things that about you as the human that maybe people don't realize?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'm a really big Harry Potter fan, so always ask me what Hogwarts house I'm in. It will probably surprise you my answer.
All right, I'm curious. What Hogwarts house are you in?
I'm actually, so I took the test online and everything. I'm a Slytherin, which is like the mean, evil.
That is surprising.
I don't know. I'm pretty competitive, so that's probably where that comes out. And then you know this about me, but I'm a cycling instructor. So the indoor spin bikes, people call them. I teach class probably about 2 times a week at a couple studios in Indianapolis. So chances are, if I'm getting on an early morning phone call with you, I've already worked out.
I'm terrified to even think about going to one of your spin classes. But when you share, you're like, oh, I've got this new playlist. I mean, here's what I love about Taylor Brown is you make it all fun. I mean, like, I'm sure if I did actually have the courage to show up to one of your spin classes, it would be an awesome playlist that you have put some thought into to make that experience a little bit better.
Yep, that's the goal. I mean, it goes back to it's not that deep as long as we can, move our legs a little bit and listen to good music. I call that a workout.
All right. So I've asked you a lot of things. This is, I guess, a little bit impromptu. Do you have any questions that you want to ask me before we wrap things up today?
Do you have any audit memories that stand out to you, either like a really good audit or a bad audit that you had to go through?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of audit memories. I'll share a couple. So I was probably within the first 3 years of my career or so, and it was an ISO audit. And the company I worked for, it was pretty large, but I remember they were going to do a design control or design history file audit, and this is I was going to say back in the day where design history files were contained in binders, but sadly that's still the case for a lot of folks.
I was going to say stone and chisel, but binders are better.
Gosh, Taylor. I mean, thank you. That's a jab at my age, but that's okay. I do remember working before computers and email, but that's a whole different story. They were doing a design history file audit, and the company, we had a lot of different teams, and so they were grabbing binders from a few different teams. And I remember sitting across from the auditor, and they were going through, and I prided myself on pristine organization of my design history file. Everything was there. I mean, I kept that stuff in order all the time. But I remember a couple of experiences from this particular audit. One was that the auditor noted that the quality of the design history files varied from one project to the next, but yet we were all following the same internal procedures. So that raised an eyebrow and a question with the auditor. But specifically as it related to me, I had referenced a particular ISO standard as a requirement for one of the catheters that I was developing. And the auditor is like, well, how did you address the clause, and I'm making the number up because I don't remember, but clause 4.2 in this particular ISO standard? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, this standard addresses tensile strength, that addresses flexibility, torqueability, blah, 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 but it also covers this piece. What did you do about that? And I'm like, deer in the headlights. I hadn't scoured through that standard and that level of detail. I didn't even think or didn't even cross my mind that I'm referencing a standard, I need to look at the standard in its entirety. So so that was a learning moment, but that also led to because of how well organized my design history files were in other audits, that audit and other audits, it led to other opportunities for me because it, we had such varying practices from a design control perspective within this company, and it created problems. So I was given this opportunity to become the design control engineer. I never heard of this before because it didn't exist, but my job was to ensure consistency from a documentation practice during the design and development process at this company. And I guess that moment probably led me to eventually starting Greenlight because I grew this passion around it. So that was that was an interesting experience. I would say more generally speaking, from an audit perspective, there were always things that we did as a company that were head scratchers for me. Like, why are we doing this? And I always looked at the external audit, as painful as it would be to get an observation from ISO or FDA. I always thought, oh, great, this will finally be an opportunity. Because when ISO issued an the auditor would issue an observation and you get a 43, it was like the company would sit up and pay attention. And I was like, oh, wow, this would be a great opportunity for us to finally do that thing that we think is weird and wonky.
Yeah.
Those are a couple of tidbits from my audit days
in the
past. Yeah.
Full circle. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, Taylor, I hope you had as much fun as I did getting an opportunity to talk. I mean, we talk every day, but we don't get to talk about this stuff all the time. So this was fun for me. So thank you.
Yeah, lots of fun with you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
You got it. Folks, Taylor Brown, medical device guru at Greenlight Guru. Of course, I encourage you all to learn more about Greenlight Guru. If you're not aware, Greenlight Guru has built and implemented the only medical device quality management system in the world today. It's been designed specifically for you as the medical device professional. And you know what? It's actually designed by med device people like Taylor are involved in the product and how it works and how it flows and how it aligns with ISO 13485. And I know, Taylor, we didn't talk about EU MDR, but keeping the Greenlight Guru software solution up to date with the ever-changing regulations, that's part of my job. It's part of Taylor's job at Greenlight Guru. So check it out, www.greenlight.guru. And as always, thank you for being a listener of the Global Medical Device Podcast, the #1 podcast in the medical device industry. Share this with your friends and colleagues, and remind them too that there are hundreds of episodes that they can go consume. So lots of great stuff. So as always, thank you. This is your host, founder, and VP of Quality and Regulatory at Greenlight Guru, Jon Speer, and you have been listening to the Global Medical Device Podcast.